Hi, and welcome back to our talk about SRE. Last two episodes we talk about what SRE is and how the spread of SRE practices work on the strategical level at bol.com. And now we'll talk about more tactical, how it works when these practices are being embedded into the culture of a team.
Yeah, exactly. So the main method of improvement that SRE embeds in a team is the error budget policy. So we talked about having user journeys and having a down select and having signals on these user journeys that correlate with the user happiness. So now they correlate well and they indicate that something is wrong. So one of the strong points of SRE is that you have an upfront agreement of how to behave when these signals indicate user unhappiness. Because there's always this traditional fight between do we work on our technical health or do we work on innovation. And by having an upfront agreement, like this is our target on these numbers, you can also say how do we behave if we're under the target, which basically gives engineers a mandate to fix things properly. So that even means that business commits to we want this target regardless of what kind of innovation we are doing, because it's this target that's maintaining the value of all the other innovation that we've done in history. And that means that if you are doing a big innovation process and these signals are out of line, then you are empowered to take the time out of your sprint and say these innovations we're not going to do now because we have our error budget telling us that we have something that we need to fix operationally.
How do these error budgets metrics look like? What are examples? Because I guess it's, well, in the simplest case, we can say, okay, a number of HTTP 500s reaching the edge or other systems. Are there more advanced ones?
Yes. So even the simplest one is actually not that simple, because you do what's called a multi-windowed, multi-burn rate alert, which looks at not at what is the state, but how quickly is it digressing? How quickly are you burning through your error budget? And then it looks at that over a small window and over a larger window, so that you get both a clear indication, but you also get a good reset time. So,
but that's about handling those metrics, right? I mean,
yes.
how you monitor the trends.
Yes.
And I was curious what kind of how complex those metrics can be. How far can they go in the functional domain? Because I'm thinking now about some cases where we were struggling, for example. Maybe we were struggling enough in those cases that we didn't even need SRE because we just had to struggle and fix those things. But often that would not be, for example, the technical, as you were saying, it would not be that much of a technical issue. It would be just that would be inconsistent. We would be missing data, or we would not produce some output, and then it would take time to fix this for functional business operators.
Yeah. No, it actually, like, the closer you can get it to actual functional indications, usually the stronger you can get it to correlate with user happiness. So it's really about what is the value that an application is delivering, and then figure out how can you capture that value in a measurement. So, for example, we are kind of dreaming at SRE of having like an NPS-based indicator.
NPS, for those of us who don't know it and remember, Net Promoter Score. Yeah, I just recall.
Exactly, that one, the Net Promoter Score. I was thinking, like, what is it for? So that's basically feedback we get from our customers and our partners on how happy they are with us as a company. And to be honest, what we probably have is that we want to find metrics that correlate with the NPS.
I remember we were doing even NPS within the company, like for internal tooling, and there would be sent the questionnaires how happy you are with using our beautiful tools.
Yeah, and if you've optimized, well, if you've found the right functional metrics, then you should be able to find those that correlate with results from queries like that. But that's kind of the high over dream. But what I'm trying to say is that you really should find metrics that capture the value that you deliver as properly as possible. And one of the more interesting ones I've been looking into recently is quality SLIs. So quality SLIs work particularly well as a measurement of resilience measures, because what resilience does is that you provide a default fallback if some upstream dependency is not available. But normally you depend on that upstream dependency. So that upstream dependency adds some value to whatever it is you are delivering. So by enabling this resilience, you will provide a lower quality result to your customer. So you can then have a quality SLI on how often are you providing this lower quality result. So that's really not about are you returning 200 or 500, but are you providing more information or less information. And then that quality SLI can work as an indicator of...
Okay, if we define those metrics, should they always be somewhere in Prometheus or somewhere when you can measure them, or can they be more difficult and post factum gathered metrics? What's your advice?
More difficult and?
More difficult and post factum aggregated.
Right, yeah. So depending on what process you're measuring, they can also be calculated after the fact. But of course, that will decrease their relevance for operational indications, for alerting. But it's definitely possible to take, especially for things like ETL jobs, quality on ETL jobs, and completeness on ETL jobs, stuff like that makes total sense to calculate after the fact.
Okay, so we define those metrics, and then we start to monitor and work with them. Does this happen that those metrics get stale and teams are not updating them, always tuning to
yes that
follow the user journeys?
Yeah, and I think we've seen this happen in several teams already. And it makes sense because you can't like focus on everything at the same time, and your primary objective as a software engineer is mostly this innovation still, and
firefighting, innovation and firefighting.
Yeah, exactly, and SRE is a way to tactically involve preventative measures for the firefighting in your innovation. Which is why I think it's a great way to get a better handle on the firefighting and the innovation. Both innovation has business teams calling now, and firefighting has operations teams calling now. So, and we are trying to say tomorrow, and the message of now is of course stronger.
And how's it working with the business stakeholders? How do they embrace this idea? Does it make sense to them? Is it taking time for them to get the value? How is it?
The high level concepts, they're always like, oh yeah, we need this. But we had an interesting discussion about this on Monday, and that is that to do SRE right, you need to go from the high over business perspective all the way to the low level application metrics and back, and you need to connect those two. And what you see often is that the people here don't know how to bring it down, and the people here don't see what the value is from the higher abstraction level. And I think that is where the biggest challenge of a site reliability engineering is in connecting that whole loop.
And how do you see the role of SRE engineers here? Is it only to connect it once and let it go, or is it always monitoring and being a little bit connecting those wires, pushing a little bit teams to revisit, to retroact on the changes in the
I think it's both in making that connection and getting the process in place, but also as safeguards for the health of the process. So that you check in with teams regularly. It's like, hey, how's it going? Are your error budgets still providing relevant information? Because if they're always 100%, then you're also doing something wrong. That's what I've been saying recently, because of course people are kind of afraid to, for example, lower the SLOs on an SLI if they're like underperforming. But if your customers are fine with that lower level of service, then lowering the SLO is a really good way to do, because it'll give you better insight in what you actually do, and it will give you more space to experiment. And then, so that means that a consistently 100% error budget is at least as relevant a signal, at least as much a talking point to change something about what's going on, as say you've burned it 3-4 times.
But okay, these are extremes, right? 100%.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly. If you're at 30%, then you're doing it right.
Okay, so 30% of burn of errors is good. When does it start to be questionable? 10, 5?
Well, that it kind of the engineering answer of it depends. You know, if there's like 5% left, then if you've tuned it right, that means that you're not making your users too unhappy. But that does mean that you also don't have lots of play for interruptions and new innovations. So you're doing it right, but you probably want to be careful with taking more experiments. It's really like a balance. It should be wiggling somewhere between, like, I don't know, minus 100 and 100, preferably between 0 and 100. But going under it is also like a good signal. The lower it is, the more careful you are, and the higher is, the more carefree you are.
Reckless.
Yes! But I didn't want to say that.
You could tell me about me. Interesting. Actually, it's a very interesting discussion. I learned a lot about SRE. I especially like this picture of connecting the dots from the higher level to the lower, because that shows me at least a very interesting added value of these activities. So it's not only about hygiene on how you run your services, but it also showing you what is the effect, which sometimes is difficult to trace for many teams in a big company where you work on small things. How does it affect? I think it's an interesting function,
because you really have to bring your low level endpoints and metrics back all the way to what do they mean for users. And most of the times, well, quite often, teams that we interact with have never really gone through this exercise, and that makes it really worthwhile exercise. All right, so I think that was another fun episode. I didn't get into the specifics of what we put in an error budget, but maybe that doesn't need to be in a friendly tech chat. I think it was in a wonderful chat.
I think it was quite, full of stuff.
Yeah.
So now you do your subscribe thing.
Right, yeah. So I get to do the subscribe thing. So if you've enjoyed this this video, and I'm gonna be sharing it with all my SRE friends as well, because I think it's fun, then please like and subscribe to Friendly Tech Chats, and help us be better with the algorithm. Woo!